That brings us to the long-awaited, much-anticipated 8C.
Keep going.
Receive a report, hold a discussion, and give staff direction regarding an update on the financial overview of the 4A Economic Development Corporation Fund, 4B Community Services Corporation Fund, Parks Performance Fund, and Golf Fund, and receive any additional direction from City Council regarding the fiscal year 2022 to 2023 annual budget. Did I go slow enough for you, Martin?
Thank you. Yes,
Staff
you did
Presenter
perfect.
Martin Avila, Finance Director. We work great as a team, by the way.
Thank you. We do. Mayor and Council, Martin Avila, Finance Director. One of the things that I did tell Parks Director Jen Basham is that there is no money tree on this. It's going just kidding. One of the things that I want to talk about is we're going to talk about several things. We're going to talk about sales tax. We're going to talk about the Parks Performance Fund, golf operations, and then we're also going to talk about 4B and 4A corporations. One of the things too, as Jen Basham talked about the 5-year CIP plan for parks, all of that as we work closely with the Parks Department, as we work closely with City Manager's Office, we took all of that information, all of those projects that were identified, and we incorporate them into our 5-year projection for the 4B fund. So going back to the sales tax is 8.25%, the City of Burleson. 6.25% goes to the state. 2% goes to the City of Burleson. And that 2% is then allocated between 1% to the general fund, 0.5% to 4B, and 0.5% to 4A. That is how the sales tax for the city's portion is allocated currently. As it relates to the assumptions that we did on the sales tax, prior years we tried to be conservative. We've been using a 3% growth over time. If you've seen those Friday reports when we showed that monthly sales tax, the sales tax has really been growing beyond double digits. So one of the things that we've done based upon what we've captured, what's happened in the past, previous years, we are going to increase our assumptions for this fiscal year to 14%. So we're going to go from 3 to 14. And so if you look at the bottom there, in fiscal year 2021 actuals, it was about $6.139 million in sales tax. At that point, we have already exceeded what we had budgeted to begin with. So what we're going to do is by going an additional increasing to 14%, we are estimating that our sales tax by the end of this year is going to be about $7 million. That $7 million only represents the portion that will go to 4A and 4B. So $7 million to 4A, $7 million to 4B. That is what that number represents. It's just 0.5% of that sales tax. And then going forward from that 14%, that we continue with a 3% increase of growth going forward. So if you look at the sales tax analysis on a monthly basis, normally collections, we receive the collections 2 months after the fact in arrears. So October's collection is received in December and so forth and so forth. So, and through April, which was February's collections, we were averaging about 20% growth compared to the previous year, not necessarily to budget, but to the previous year's actuals. So based upon that information, we really felt, at least increase it to 10%. That is our assumption right now. Probably could be higher, but we wanted to still be conservative, so the overall is that 14% as we continue for the rest of the year in collecting our sales tax. This just kind of gives you a graphic of where we've been and where we're going. And we just continue to go up. And so that's the whole basis of where we're going to start with the sales tax. On Parks Performance Fund, beginning fund balance is 0. We're projecting for the end of fiscal year 2022, expenditures will exceed the revenues by $2.8 million. And that $2.8 million will be subsidized by the 4B fund. And again, the end result of that fund balance will be zero. What I wanted to share in this particular slide is talk about the brick operations in relationship to the facilities. One of the things that I wanted to point out is looking back at the pre-pandemic years of 2019, at that point, the brick operations was self-sustaining at about 76%. As of right now, kind of estimate-wise, it's going to be at 46. We're projecting in 23, it's going to be about 47. So the whole basis of what we're saying here is that we're still not at pre-pandemic numbers, and something that needs to be, we're just looking at that. Athletic field operations, ball fields, recreations, baseball leagues, sport leagues. Again, pre-pandemic numbers were 17% self-sustaining, and we're projecting probably by the end of 23, it's only going to be 12. So still, the numbers are still below pre-pandemic numbers. Russell Farm operations, pre-pandemic was at 25% for self-sustaining, and it is approximately 12% by the end of this year and next year. So it's kind of stabilized there at that point. So if you take
Martin,
all...
Can
yes.
you back up
Yes.
the last 3 slides? I'm just pointing out that pertaining to the brick, pertaining to one slide back, the athletic fields, the brick operations, even though our revenues are much lower, our expenditures are so much higher. From 2018-19 to 2022-2023, we've gone up $1 million in operations expense. How do we account for that as a response to lower membership, lower dues collected? I know expenses are higher, but they're not half again higher. Why is that?
I think one of the things too is you still have the employees that are operating there. There hasn't been any reductions, so there is that salary personnel cost as it relates to that. There's in addition to that, there's the discussion of implementing a 5-year replacement of the equipment. So those costs have continued to maintain and to operate the facilities regardless of the membership. So those are some of the costs that have continued to grow.
So I think one of the things we're looking at too, and we had this very discussion with staff as we were putting this together, is you're looking at a budget number in 22-23 versus an actual of, if you recall back in the pandemic, we significantly scaled back on a lot of the programming that we had. A lot of programs ended up being eliminated. The swim programs, as an example, were eliminated. And so you didn't see those costs there. We're showing those coming back online. And we can detail those out for you. And I don't know if, Jen, you have some more details that we could share with the council. But that's some of it, is it's an actual number versus a planned projection for all of the staff programming coming back online.
Yeah, so Brian's very correct. So we installed our new equipment replacement. So last year, $200,000 that hadn't been used in a few years was to replace equipment that had been aging. We moved some staff that was originally in administration. They moved over to the recreation account for the 4B. So that's a percentage of it. And then, of course, merit and increase in wages. We've brought new programs back on, and the registration numbers, they're meeting the minimum where they used to meet the maximum. And so as they grow back into that, we still have to pay for that program at its normal operating cost, but we're not having the same number of registrants yet. So that's what we have to do to get people back in the door, and we're hoping that that revenue continues to climb to start to offset that expenditure.
Can we get a breakdown?
All of what you're saying is understandable, but I feel like we're capable in the brick operation. We've proven it historically. We go back far before 2018, 2019, we've run at a fairly consistent 75% self-sustaining operation there. I think we'll get back up to that. I think the pandemic effect has taken its toll, and its pound of flesh along with it, but I think we need to target to get back up into that number, and whether that means reducing expenses, letting the employee workforce reduce through attrition or reassignment to other areas. That needs to be a goal. It needs to be a target that we don't stick down around the the 50% self-sustaining, we need to get back up. No one expects the brick to make money, at least no reasonable person, because it is a park. Parks make zero money, but the brick has been able to be 75% self-sustaining pretty consistently through time, and I think we need to try to get back up there.
And that's our goal internally as well. So our internal staff goal is to get back to 83%. In what window of time that occurs, we're not sure yet. We were hoping to be back up to 60% by this time. So we're actively working on ways to get those revenue numbers up. And then we've restructured a lot in the last year to determine like how can we maximize our staffing levels, whether that's, we had an abundance of part-timers, but we could never fill those positions. Do we just need to combine those and bring in fewer full-timers and see how that works? So we're still scrubbing that, but we're absolutely keeping that at the top of our priority list.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I would,
Sorry, I was going to say, is there a way we could get a breakdown of the expenditures? Thanks.
sure, we'll be glad to do that. And I'd echo the points of Jen and Mayor Pro Tem, and we certainly want that goal to be coming back up. And as you look at the recreation membership, we've seen significant improvement over the last couple of years, but we're still not back to the top numbers that we've had. We're going to continue to work on that, and we'll look at the cost side as well. I think as you'll see going forward, we expect to get back to more of a normal operation in the next couple of years, and these subsidy levels will then normalize. But if that doesn't occur or doesn't occur in the time frame we're looking at, then we have other changes we can look at making and bringing back to you, whether it's cost or changing programming or trying to remain more relevant in that space to make sure we bring more people back. It's a good conversation. It's certainly been an interesting couple of years to live through, and hopefully we're on the right path now for the revenues.
So looking at the Parks Performance Fund, all combined operations, it is at about 37% self-sustaining when you combine all three programs together. Overall, again, this kind of gives you a 5-year projection. If you look at the 4B transfer, it kind of stays at about $3 million going forward until again we start looking at either the cost or we start looking at the revenues going up. And so that is in essence where we're at currently going forward. The golf fund, again, also is a zero balance, fund balance in the beginning of the year. It does have projected expenditures exceeding the revenues by $1.1 million. And again, that has also been subsidized by the 4B fund as well to get into an ending fund balance of $0. There is, again, based upon the 5-year CIP plan that Jen presented, there is about $1.1 million in capital improvements in that plan, and all of that is also incorporated in the 4B fund as a cash funding of those capital projects. Again, in this one, as you look at the golf 5-year financial overview, the 2019 pre-pandemic self-sustaining percentage was 53%. I think that in this particular fund, there have been changes in regards to the revenue fees for the green fees, different things that were done there. We are projecting, or estimate at 59% self-sustaining, and probably continues to grow over the next 5 years. So thinking by the end of 5 years, it'll be about 60%. Now, in addition to that, if you look at the different subsidies, you also see a 4B debt transfer. The transfers of the debt are included within this fund. Any transfers of debt from the 4B for parks related are not transferred into the park fund. So you see an extra subsidy in the golf fund for the debt, but in the Parks Performance Fund or in the 4B fund, you don't see that. It's all pretty much paid directly from the 4B straight into the debt service payments there. So you look at that subsidies, you look at the personnel costs, and again, in this particular example, it seems like the golf operations has exceeded its pre-pandemic numbers based upon that.
So I just wanted to amplify that point a bit too that Martin made is the brick was built I guess, in about 2010, 2011 timeframe. So in the next 8 years, it's kind of hard to believe that that facility will be paid off, and those debt payments will be coming down for 4B. But they're shown here in golf because this is a proprietary fund, but in the Parks Performance Fund, it's a special governmental revenue fund. It's not shown that way. So it's a little bit of apples and oranges, but the numbers in Parks Performance Fund would be much worse on a subsidy level if you were to include those debt payments in there. So this is, the golf fund is by far your highest performing asset in the park system in terms of self-sufficiency. So I just wanted to make that clear as we kind of look at those numbers.
$4B fund. $4B fund, as I mentioned earlier, receives 0.5 cent of the 2% from the local sales tax. The estimated year-end fund balance for the end of this year is going to be about $5.7 million. That's about a 90% fund balance percentage to expenditures, whereas our minimum is 20%, so it's really highly funded currently, which allows for the ability to fund some of these projects that we're talking about. 4B, some of the support that it does, it supports parks and golf capital projects. Currently, it is in the projections for 2023. There is a $2 million cash funding to complete the funding for the new Parks Annex. Jan had mentioned that earlier in her presentation. It also is part of that 4B 5-year CIP plan. There's $37.9 million in capital projects that were presented earlier in this presentation, and $8.8 million of that is cash funding. It's cash funding from different sources that we have, that we're making sure that we utilize all of these available sources before we issue any debt, from park zone fees, park dedication fees, available bond proceeds that have to be reallocated, and also 4B cash funding as well. So all of that combined, $29 million is in essence being proposed as a bond issuance over the next 5 years, based upon the CIP plan that was presented earlier. In addition to all of that for capital funding, it also 4B is also the fund that subsidizes the operations of the Parks Performance Fund and the Golf Fund. So taking all of that information and it kind of gets projected out, including the increasing of the 14% of the sales tax, looking at all the different debt service, looking at all the different subsidies. What it does is that in fiscal year 22, we estimate 90% fund balance percentage, and then it continues as we fund these projects, these capital projects, $29 million worth of capital projects for parks, then we continue to maintain above 40% fund balance for the following 5 years. And that's taking the assumption that we have a 14% increase in our assumptions for sales tax going forward, 3% going forward. All of that will fund what we have and still have a strong fund balance in the 4B fund. The 4A, Economic Development Corporation, receives another half of the 2% of local sales tax. For fiscal year 2022, fund balance for the 4A fund will be $6.5 million. Fund balance percentage to expenditures is about 157% fund balance when we have a 20% minimum. It's a very strong fund balance. Some of the key items that are highlighted with the 4A fund is Ellice Street project, which cash funded some dollars into that project. Alley Cat Entertainment Headquarters, which is an incentive program. You also have the Future Industrial Park expansion, which would be bond projects, bond proceeds, and then the Chisholm Summit development, which is also a bond project. So within this 5-year CIP plan, we have projected as part of bond issues for the economic development out of the 4A or supported by 4A, you have $30 million in 23, $15 million in 24, and $10 million in 25. And taking all that into account, if you look at, again, the sales tax at 14%, with 3% going forward, all the incentives, the debt service that it currently has, the debt service that it's going to bring up in the next 3 years, it's still over triple, over 150, actually 300. It's just a strong fund balance. And that is my overview for these 4 funds.
I don't see it happening, but if we have $16 million fund balance in the 4A, I'm going to scream. You'll hear me all the way to downtown Fort Worth.
No, I don't think Alex will allow that. I think Alex is continuing to look, continuing to see, continue to spend. So that is the whole focal point. But
That money
as a
needs to go to
snapshot,
work. I don't like to look at a projection that just shows that growing and growing
Right.
and growing and growing. We need direction, we need a project, we need, turn that guy in the back row loose and let's go build some factories.
We hear that loud and clear. We certainly don't want to see you there in 5 years doing that. We're going to be coming to you, as Alex talked about earlier, with an economic development strategic plan. We've got a lot of ideas and options on industrial park expansion, some other projects we're going to be looking at. We've put in a placeholder for 10 and 15 million for business park expansion, but those are just planning level numbers. So certainly, as we kind of look at this in a little bit more detail, we'll give you much better information to go with. But nevertheless, it's very, very good position financially for the fund, so we've got a lot of options as we look at projects.
I certainly do hope, and I know all of you are ready for me to say it, but I do hope we maintain a relatively healthy balance in case our economy does slide. And I'm fearful of that, and I know I always say that, and my buddy over here always says the other, but I am fearful that we do need to maintain a pretty good balance here to make sure we're okay.
Anybody else? Thank you, Martin.
thank you.
Mayor and council, that brings us to Section 9, City Council request for future agenda items or reports.
Ronnie? Dan? Nothing? Rick? We got nothing.